If you haven't done it, it'll, we might go a little fast because we have to cover the entire canvas. But the important thing to keep in mind is that I want all of you to right now go, if you haven't done this, go to, okay, it's up here. Go to the announcements, and there is a, oh, actually go to your Slack. I think I posted a copy of the business model canvas to your Slack. You're going to be using that. Let me find mine. You're going to be using that for today's class. So if you haven't found it, this is a good time to go open up the canvas in your PDF. I'm doing it myself. Hold on one second. Any questions while I do it?
Just want to double check, are all the videos together about 10 minutes? Because after I finished those videos, it was saying they're like, seems like more business courses will like coming out. Are we supposed to
I'll show you. I'll show you
all of them, or just the first?
I'll show you. One second.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So I want everyone to be able to open this thing. It's called the business model canvas. I sent you a PDF, and you're going to be writing on this. Okay. And you can do this one per team or one per person. But when you submit this, it'll be one per team. But because we are all remote now, just it might be easier to just do it one per person. So, you can type in your, type in things in here like that. Okay, so just be prepared to do that. I'm going to use preview with these sticky notes, but you don't have to do it. You can use whatever program you want. Oops, let me delete that. Actually, I might just use my text here, and I'm going to change my color so you can all see it. I'll make it pink and big. Okay. But what's important is that you do this as we talk. Okay, so just be prepared for that. Okay, now let me answer your question. Okay. And feel free to stop me if something is not clear. So the link to the class on Udacity is here on the announcements, and you can go it. But I have already logged in, and that's what the class looks like. Okay. So I'm going to go back. Let's go to my home. Okay, so this is a course. You can see it, how to build a startup right there. Okay, so if I click on it, I've actually gone through all this, but what I want you to, so this is an entire class, just you're aware of it. So it's lesson 1, that's lesson 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it typically goes for, a couple of weeks. I think it's a 12 lesson class, as you can see. So it takes a long, not very long, but it took me a couple of weeks to actually go through the whole thing. And I recommend you do it. But for this particular class, what I need you to do is to be able to watch lesson 1, lesson 2, and lesson 3. The rest are optional. If you have time, do it. Okay. But for this class, I want you to watch lessons 1, 2, and 3, which is what I mentioned in the announcement. Okay. Once that's clear, so it's pretty straightforward. You click on it and videos to watch. Okay. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing in the interest of time. So let me stop here and first ask, has everybody been able to open the canvas? Does anyone have problems accessing canvas and editing it? Okay, if you say nothing, that means I assume that you're able to do it. Okay.
I have some problem. I can't edit the PDF.
You can or you cannot?
I cannot. That's the problem.
Okay, so then what I recommend is, okay, if you want, you can print it out and write on the piece of paper, which is what we usually do in class. If that's not possible right now, I would just open up a Word doc or take a piece of paper and just write it.
Oh, did you say you post the Canvas link on Slack?
Yes.
Yes, there's a PDF on Slack.
Yeah, currently I copy and pasted it into Paint, and then you can use the text box in Paint and write it in there.
Yes. Or if you don't have it, just write on a blank piece of paper. And I'll tell you the titles to write on.
So where did you send it on Slack? Is that general or?
It's in the general channel. Yeah. And if you don't find it at the end of this class, just message me.
Oh, okay, I see it. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm assuming everyone has it. So now we're going to jump right in. So the other thing I would say is try to identify your teammates for your projects right now. So that, and you're going to, and feel free to chat privately, because what I'm going to do, what we are all going to do together is we're going to fill in the canvas. And this would be what we call the first version of the canvas. And at the end of this, you're going to save it. And that'll be a part of your assignment 5. Now, and there will be another version, which I'll talk about later. Now, what you want to do is be able to identify your teammates and be able to privately chat with them in order to discuss what you're going to put on the canvas. Okay, so this is a good time for you to establish the chat. And you don't need to include me. It can be public if you want, but it's easier if it's private. Okay, we're not going to do breakout rooms because it's hard to assign everyone and then come back and so on. It wastes a lot of time. So we're just going to do it through the chat. Okay, is everyone okay with that? No questions. Okay, perfect. Again, feel free to interrupt if you need me. Okay, so we are going to start here, which is lesson 3. Okay, so I'm assuming you already watched lesson 1 and 2. If not, please go and watch it. Okay, so I'm going to open that up and I'm going to start at the very beginning. Okay, so these, just as a quick, easy tutorial, these are all different lectures and they're very short, like 3 to 4 minutes. So very easy to watch, right? And Steve is an excellent teacher. He goes through things very clearly. So it's a really useful thing. What I'm going to do today is to guide you through these 11 lectures, 11 very short videos, and then we're going to watch each one, and then we're going to go in and fill in that portion of the canvas. Now, keep in mind, each of these 3 to 4 minute lectures is expanded as part of this Udacity class into a full, 30-minute or 40-minute lecture. So if you're interested in any of this in any great detail, I highly recommend you watch it. It's very easy and it's easy to understand. So, instead of watching TV at night before you go to bed, watch a few of these lectures because it'll really help you think. And the reason I really like this is because like I said before, I took this class because it was part of an online class for free offered through Stanford. And it really changed the way I thought of entrepreneurship. So it really changed my perspective, and I think it's very valuable for you. And this is what I'm hoping to convey. Okay, so let's jump right in. Again, the goal here is for us as entrepreneurs to be able to understand what does it really, as technologists, what does it really take to actually build a company? Because again, the goal is not only the technical aspects of the class, which we have talked about in the first half of the semester, is to be able to combine this technical aspect of the class to everything else that is needed to actually make a technology into something realistic. Okay. Okay, with that, let's jump right in and let me know if you cannot hear the sound. I'll try to turn that up. Ah, sorry.
But before we even begin, one of the first questions.
Can everybody hear that, or is it too loud? It's important.
Yes.
It's
off?
really low.
Really low. Okay.
Yes.
So I'll turn it way up and take off my headphones.
I tend to ask is, what is a company? What is it that I'm trying to?
Can you guys hear that, or is that still too low?
It's a lot better.
Okay, great. I will take off my headset one.
It's a business organization which sells a product or service in exchange for revenue and profit. So explicitly, for the purpose of this class, I'm eliminating nonprofits. let me be clear, you could use the business model canvas and customer development to go through the process for nonprofits, but actually having some goals that are fairly concrete, revenue and profit, allows us to measure whether we're succeeding and failing in very clear ways. And that leads us to the question, what's a startup? You told us what a company is, but how does a startup differ? And for me, you have to know, I spent 20 years doing 8 startups, and I never could have given you a definition off the top of my head what a startup is. I always thought a startup is where we had free food, where there was a great small team, or you could bring your dog and whatever, but I never quite understood the purpose of a startup. So I'm going to give you Steve's definition of what it is you're actually doing. One is a startup is a temporary organization designed to search for a repeatable and scalable business model. Now let's go back and parse this sentence because this is pretty important. Number one is temporary. The goal of a startup is not to be a startup. A startup actually aims to become a company. Well, that's kind of interesting because if you really think about it, at least if you're a web mobile startup, there's no such thing as a 10-year-old startup. There's a 2-year-old startup attached to an 8-year-old failure. A startup is a temporary organization. And what are you supposed to be doing? Well, while you think it might be building the product, or maybe if you're thinking harder, it might be get customers. Actually, no. A startup is actually designed to search for something. Well, that's kind of interesting. What is it that I'm supposed to be searching for? Let's see. Well, number one, you want to search for something that's repeatable. And repeatable means the same thing that works on Monday, works on Wednesday, and works on Friday, and works next week, and works the next month. That is, I want to find sales and marketing and engineering processes that are repeatable. I also want to find them scalable. What scalable means, I put $1 in, I get $2 out. Or I put $1 in, maybe I get $10 out. But I better not be losing money on a continual basis, or I'm called a out of business startup. Okay, I know I'm searching now for something repeatable and scalable, but what is it that I'm searching for? And what you're searching for is the business model. And that business model search is the basis of the rest of the class. So let's take a look and see how we become a company.
Okay, so I'm going to pause. And first of all, I want to make sure everyone can hear. Let me pause that. Everyone could hear that, right? Yes. Okay. If no one, if someone is having problems hearing it, let
Yeah.
me know right now. Okay.
It would be better if you can make it even louder. I feel like I can hear it, but it's still a little bit low.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I had the same issue with a different Zoom thing, but I've maximized the sound
Oh,
from my
okay,
end.
it's
So
fine. It's fine.
not much I can do, but
Oh yeah, I can hear it. It just it's a little bit low, but I have no problem hear it. Yeah, so it's fine, I think.
and I just saw that Joseph, you just joined. So make sure you open up the canvas, which looks like this in PDF, and be able to edit it, or you can just write on a piece of paper if you don't have it easily editable. And identify your project teammates, because you're going to do this as part of your project team. And this is part of your assignment 5, for instance. And 6, by the way, but 5 primarily. Okay. So that was a very brief introduction. Why are we talking about this? Because we need to understand how to take an idea from the lab into something real. And that process is very different than what you would expect to do if you joined a large company like IBM, for instance. Although companies like IBM do try to do that, generally speaking, they don't. So that's the whole purpose of understanding this, okay? So this is the overview of the canvas. So let's listen to this. I think, yeah, it's very short. So let's just play that quickly.
So one of the interesting things about thinking about a startup is, how is your company going to be organized? And what we now know is the most efficient way to think about all the pieces, just all the parts, is by a business model. So the next question is, okay, Steve, you just told me to think about a business model, but what is a business model? What are all the pieces? Well, let's take a look. business model is how a company creates value for itself while delivering products or services for its customers. Now, if you think about it, in the old days, we think about how to organize a company around functional organizations. We think, no, 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 a company is about its sales department or its engineering department, and you would draw an org chart. But now we're going to draw a very different diagram. We're going to draw a diagram how to think about all the pieces of a business. And so let's take a look at these 9 boxes. 9 boxes to describe any company from the world's largest to a 2-person startup starting in your parents' garage.
Okay, so that's our goal. Okay, so I'm gonna actually go back here. Actually, I'm gonna go to the canvas. So that's the goal here. Okay, we're going to fill out this thing called the business model canvas, which actually has 9 boxes, and we are going to go through each of these boxes and try to understand what they mean and how they relate to your particular project topic and innovation. So you're going to try to fill that out. And that is your first part of your assignment 5. Okay, and you're going to do this as part of your team, but if it's not easy for you to do this as a team right now, just do it by yourself. But think from the perspective of your innovation for your team. Okay, so this is the canvas, and we're going to start with the first thing, which is the value proposition, which you can see it's the center part here. So I'm going to move my pink text right there. I'm going to make it a little bigger so everyone can see it. Okay, so what am I going to do? First of all, we are going to watch the video to explain what this means. Then we are going to try to type in what is the value proposition of your particular team's innovation in here, as you guess it. And it will be a guess, as you will see shortly, which is fine. Okay, any questions before I get started? So if you don't have the PDF and you cannot edit it, just do it on a piece of paper. Just write down value proposition and just write down. You will write down these after we watch the video. I'll give you a few minutes. Okay, and you're welcome to do chat. I would say don't talk by voice between yourself because then it becomes confusing, but feel free to do private chat with your team members. But we'll do that after we watch the video. Okay, so let's jump right in. Any questions before I start? Then, okay, so I'm going to play this and then we'll talk. About a minute and a half, so pay attention to it.
Let's take a look at the first piece called the value proposition. The value proposition answers the question, what are you building and for who? The value proposition says, hey, it's not about your idea or product, it's about solving a problem or a need for a customer. That is, what pain are you solving? What gain are you creating? And more importantly, who are your customers? Now, value proposition is a fancy word for what product or service are you building. This is where you normally would list all your features and here's all the speeds and feeds and benefits and whatever. But we're really going to be asking a different question than might have been used to. It's not all about your technology. Your technology is just part of the value proposition. Customers really don't care about your technology. The customers are trying to solve a problem or fulfill a need. By the way, we'll be talking about this through multiple lectures. The difference between a problem and a need is a problem is I have an accounting problem or I want to use a word processor. And those types of products solve problems. But there are other things that human beings do, like I want to be entertained or I want to have a date. Those are some basic hardwired social media. Or I want to communicate with my friends on Facebook. These are different problems. By the way, if you could find products that solve needs, your total available market, as you'll see later, is huge compared to solve problems.
Okay, so what we are going, I'm going to push this back to here. So I think about here.
Part of the value.
Oops. So we're going to take a few minutes now. Each team, I think this is probably a good picture to have while you do this. So what you're going to do is with your team members or by yourself, if you cannot do it easily with your team members, I want you to think about your innovation, and I want you to type in here or write down what is the problem. So let's look at this again. What is the value proposition? Is really not about your idea or product. It's about solving a need or a problem. So first identify what problem or need are you trying to solve. Okay. Uh, yeah, and I think that's the main thing. And typically you might have more than one, and these are all guesses at the moment. So go ahead. I want you to first try yourself. Let's say let's do this for about a minute, and then I'm going to ask some specific teams to talk about it. And we'll talk together as a group so everyone can learn about it. But go ahead, first take a guess and write down what you think are the value propositions. And if you're confused about something, just ask me. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to ask, let's see, how about the solar cooker team? Do you want to say what you put down? Anyone from that team?
I write it down individually. I don't know about my team members.
I see Kevin's on, and okay, tell us what you wrote down, Ekata.
Okay, I jot down some points and problems. It's about the high cost of the soda cooker, so less availability to the each of the person.
Okay, so the value proposition is a reduction of cost.
Reduction of cost, yeah, and for the weather properties that taken into account, that is for the windy days, night, and the rainy season. How do you handle the solar cooker?
Yes, that's a good point. That's a problem. So
next thing is we are having our microwave or like those oven. So that oven we can set a timer and we can wait for the timer to cook that things up. So we can set a timer. I think for the automatic control.
Yeah, I mean, temperature would be the one thing we talked about in class. That would be
okay. Yeah, temperature control. And we have another problem for the sunny days, that excessive heat is going to generate. So we need to look at on that issue.
Okay, great.
And another 2 points there. And the last point is about the portability and how we can handle in case of outing or like this thing. And next thing is the even if the windy days, the surface are going to be polluted, so we need to clean the surface, or we need to have something to deal with this problem. So I jot on this problem. And
let me ask. Okay, so I think you have the basic concept there. Can I ask the PV team, the photovoltaics team, to comment?
Yeah. So for PV,
our value proposition here would be to offer customers an affordable alternative energy solution, as well as could also offer more reliable alternative energy solution.
Okay, so
So
the cost
yeah,
itself, yeah, and
yeah. So it's so
reliability is a tricky thing, but it's similar to what Ikata was talking about, where you have to quantify it at some point, but that's fine for now. Go ahead, Jiaxi.
oh, so we are thinking the needs that we are meeting is providing, like Nick mentioned, cleaner energy with less space, and also saving customer utility money with minimum cost. So those are all the problems and needs we're solving, combined with the technology that we're exploring right now.
Okay, so again, the value proposition must tie into your innovation, which is why it is very specific. When you start off, of course, it'll be very general because you're trying, for instance, the desalination team will be providing clean water at low cost, right? That would be a general kind of thing. But then you have to later on tie it somehow to your innovation. Okay, what is the problem of the current technology that you're solving with your particular innovation? And that will take some time. You have to think through it, but it's fine for now. And we'll come back to this point is that you actually have to iterate through this by actually talking to people who will potentially use the technology. And we'll talk more about this. Okay. Any other team who want to volunteer some interesting value proposition? Yeah.
I can volunteer ours for the solar desalination.
Yeah, go ahead.
So ours is obviously freshwater production, but with respect to our innovation, we want to do it at a larger scale, at least a family scale or a village scale, in a design that requires no external electricity input, but has a higher water production than other designs.
Yeah, that's very clear. Yeah, very good. So I think, and what you will realize with the exercise or the canvas as we go through this is that at the end of this lecture, what I'm going to ask you to do is to actually talk to potential customers based on your idea of the product and get feedback from them. And what happens is that so what we are going to fill in today are basically guesses, right? These are hypotheses. We don't know if it's true. But actually talking to people who might finally use the product, we will correct the hypothesis, either verify the guesses, or more likely we'll correct our guesses. Our guesses are most likely to be wrong. So this is why I said there's a first version of this canvas, and then there will be another version of this canvas which you're going to submit for your assignment 5. Okay. Okay, so let's move on to the next box in the interest of time. Oh, yeah, we got to move a little faster. Okay, so everybody needs to fill out. I'm not going to ask everyone because we don't have time to go through every team. So everyone needs to fill out this box. Okay, so I'm going to assume we did the value proposition. So now we're going to look at customer segments, which is over here. Okay, I'll move my text over here. Okay, this is somewhat easier. So let's watch the video quickly. It's here.
So the next thing is, who are my customers? Who are they and why would they buy? And as you'll hear a number of times, your customers do not exist to buy, you exist for them. And what you're going to do by getting out of the building is figuring out all their geographic, social characteristics, demographics, such that you actually could draw and put up a picture on your wall of who the archetype is or who the persona is of your customer. And it turns out that in most startups, you might have more than 1 or 2 or 3 types of customer archetypes and personas, but you need to understand them in detail. And there is no possible way you could have anything but a hypothesis on day 1 of who they are.
Okay, so I think it's, oops, let me put this, pretty obvious. So take a cut at it. So again, the idea is to understand who is the person, and when I say customer, it's not necessarily the end user. So when it's a customer, it's the person who would actually be paying you the money. Okay, so keep that in mind and fill in the boxes. Let's see, I'm going to put a timer for a minute. So just to remind ourselves, oops,
So the next thing is who they are.
pause it here so you can look at the key things there. And you can have more than one customer segment, obviously, right? So let's think about examples. Let's see. Zoom, for the customers for Zoom. There are enterprise customers like the University of Utah, which pays for a license, so we can all do this class. There are also customers like you or me, like personal folks who want to just use it for our own personal use. We may not, and that's a free account. It's a freemium account. We only pay for certain specific things, right? So there are two different segments in that example. And you can think of any other company, Airbnb, Uber, whatever. But of course, I want you to fill this out for your own innovation. By the way, the reason I'm asking you to do this is because as engineers, we don't think this way. It's a very different way of thinking, but it's very important if you want to be successful entrepreneur in entrepreneurship, you need to be able to think this way. So it allows you to essentially open a different perspective. Okay, so hopefully you had a chance to write something down. Let's ask a team we haven't heard from. How about the daylighting team? Wei or anyone else from the daylighting team want to comment what you put down for customer segments? Hello, you guys hear me?
Okay, yeah, I hear you.
I just picked your name, but it doesn't have to be you. Anyone from your team?
Okay.
No? Who else is on from the daylighting team? Let's see. Anyone from the daylighting team? Can't tell who's on, but okay, Wei, what did you put down?
Okay, so our design is for like personal house. It can also be used in like school, like classrooms.
Yeah. So
And some small companies as well.
So let's dig in a little bit more. When you say personal houses, there would be homeowners, not renters, or
Yes.
maybe property management companies, maybe builders, right? Contractors who build new homes.
Designers.
Architects.
House designers.
Okay, very good. So you have to dig in a little bit.
Okay.
But the key is that every person has a different motivation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you need to understand it. So because you need to understand what is the person looking for, like what is the value, and that will actually feed into the value proposition, right? The value to a builder could be very different than the value to a homeowner. Sometimes, of course, they're aligned, but they need not be.
Okay.
And all of these are important to think through, and they might seem like trivial or common sense, but they're very critical because they affect the technical decisions. Think about Tesla, right? Tesla does not use LiDAR, and there's a reason for it. They only use cameras, although LiDAR is probably a better technology. And I don't know why, but I have some guesses, but there is a reason for it. There's a technological decision that was based on feedback from customers. Let's see. How about the online PV group? I see Carl or Stephen. Are you on? Or Shaila?
Yeah.
You're all, wait. Shaila's not on your team. Okay, so
No.
I'll ask you guys first.
Yeah. So for our customers, we talked about how it's for families that live in rural or impoverished areas where clean water may be hard to come by, or another customer may be like charitable organizations that distribute water and may need this device to get a constant stream of clean water.
Very good. Yeah. So the NGOs will be a very common segment for several of your projects, and they have a very specific segment, right? So the World Health Organization or Oxfam or the Gates Foundation, whatever, right? So they are a customer segment because a lot of times, they are the ones who will actually purchase the system from you and install it. So you need to really understand, okay, what motivates them. And I'm not an expert in this field, but that's something you're going to have to try to understand. And the only way to really understand is to talk to them. You can't really understand it just by taking a class or reading something. Let's see. Before we move on to the next one, anyone else want to suggest? I mean, I think a lot of you would have outdoor enthusiasts, right? Hikers, folks who want to, maybe the desalination team will have like folks who want to live on a boat or go sailing for long distances. That would be an example. Disaster relief, Red Cross, right? So these are probably pretty common examples for most of you. Let's see, what did I miss? Anything else that I haven't mentioned so far, anyone thought of? No? Okay. Okay, so let's move on to the next. So make sure you keep writing these down, because at the end of this class, I will want you to save what you wrote down and yeah, save it for yourself, because you're going to compare this to what you will produce in November. And then you're going to compare it before and after. So make sure you save this, whatever you write down, okay? Okay, so then let's move on to the next segment, which is channels, which is over here. Okay, so everyone identified that. So
the next is channels. How does your product over here get to your customers over here? And we use distribution channels to do that. Now, what's really interesting is pre-1990s, the only channel to get to a customer was a physical channel. That is, you went to a store, you had salespeople, there was physical distribution. But since the mid-1990s, in the last couple of decades, we now have virtual channels, the web, mobile, cloud. And so distribution channels, the first question you want to ask is, how will I be selling and how will I be distributing my products? Are they through physical channels, or are they web mobile? Or given today, almost every physical channel also has a web presence. What is the relationship of how your product gets from your company to the customers?
okay, so try to fill in your guess as to what your channels will be. Let's give it about a minute. So go ahead, make sure you write it down. By the way, at the end of this class, I'm going to ask you all to share what you have. So make sure you write something down. You can take a picture of it and show it, or share your PDF. So make sure you do it, actually. Again, if you have problems, let me know. Okay, so of course, channels are important because, again, that can affect your technology. Let me just give you one very good example is IKEA, right? The reason IKEA is so successful is because they came up with a way to be able to ship, um, complex furniture and things like that in a flat form factor. So you save shipping costs and then it's assembled. And that was their entire value proposition. And they're very successful because of that, right? And the channel is really the part that drives the value proposition in that example. So it's a good example. Um, let's see. Um, so let's go. Let me ask someone who I haven't called. Um, I can see a list here. Joseph, do you want to share what you wrote down? How will your product, which has your innovation, reach the customer?
So basically, our innovation is the desalination. So we can essentially bring it to the consumer in a way that's simple and easily accessible for the consumer. So it can either be like easily mobile in like small remote villages or even like commercial areas, and essentially just provide the clear water in a form that doesn't need excess electricity and that's easy for the consumer to just use and operate.
Okay. Yeah. That's a very general overview. Now you need to think about very specifically. Let's imagine how is someone going to purchase it? Are they going to go to a store like Home Depot and buy it? Are they going to go to your website and just order
Yeah,
it?
I
Are
would
they going to
assume it
go
would
to
be
Amazon and order it? So all of
probably a
these are
web.
options, right?
Mhm.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
probably a website, and then that the whole kind of design can be delivered and set up for the consumer that can make it easy so the consumer doesn't have to set it up or worry about all those kinds of things. I feel like that would be the easiest way to
Yeah,
go
that's
about.
a great point. You raise a very important point. The model of IKEA. It's a good example. If you buy something from IKEA, you have to spend many hours assembling it,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Or the IKEA you pay something extra, and IKEA could do a service where someone actually assembles it for you. So those
Okay.
could be like premium services or whatever, right? Something like that. That's another good example. Of course, in all your examples, in your projects, everything is physical, but Netflix will be an example where you have digital. You just want to watch a TV show or a
Mhm.
movie, and that's not physical. You just need the internet, and everything is web-based. So that the channel there is just your cable service provider, right? So
Yeah,
Netflix
makes
needs
sense.
to make sure that people have access to internet. Same thing with Facebook. So why do you think Facebook spends so much money trying to have easier internet access around the world? It's because they want to gain more users, right? Because their entire channel is based on web access. So that's a good example. Let's see. Any um, yeah, we didn't talk about how to acquire the customers yet, but this is really how the product gets there. So you could, of course, if you are dealing with, for instance, hikers or outdoor enthusiasts, you would be, potentially dealing with a middleman like REI. That'd be a good example, right? Or Target or whatever it is, right? So you have to think about those things as well. How does that channel get there? Or you can just sell it directly from your own website. And some of these affect the way you think about a business model because it changes the amount of capital you need. So for example, are you going to outsource to someone else the assembly of the system or the installation of a system if you're doing solar desalination, right? Are you going to have employees who do this, right? I mean, these are all very important decisions that you may have to make up front because, for example, if if you have a very proprietary technology that you don't want your competitors to know, you probably want to do this in-house. Whereas if you want to make it more widely accessible, then you probably want to have it so easy that you don't, anyone can assemble it or install it
Mhm.
and run it. So all of these are very important considerations to start thinking about and brainstorm. And we're not going to do justice in the few minutes that we're spending. This is why all of you have to spend a bit more time with your teammates filling these things out and thinking more carefully through these.
Quick question. If we were to go on the like mass production route and like the simple route, where would patents come into play? Like
Yes, excellent question. Yeah, this is a very important question. I think there are, first of all, there's a lot of disagreement about patents, and I'm not going to there is no one correct answer. Many people think patents are extremely valuable. I mean, and they go crazy, trying to build and try to protect your technology. Many people think it's not that valuable. People copy everybody else's technology, so it's not that critical. I don't have a good answer for you. I think it really depends on your technology. I think you have to understand your industry very well and try to talk to your customers, try to understand your competitors, and try to see if patents are a good way to prevent competitors from copying, or is it pretty frivolous? In other words, anyone can copy it, right? A good example. Okay, let's look at an example for all of these kinds of questions. Think about Uber. I mean, it's a very simple idea, right? Anyone could copy it. So I assume they have patents, but really patents are not going to prevent someone else. I mean, you can build an Uber-like app today in an afternoon if you're a fairly good developer, right? So, but so what would you say? Why is Uber more successful than some other company, right? And there are many other reasons for it, probably not related to IP or patents. Okay. However, on the other hand, if you think about a company like Qualcomm makes almost 95% of its revenue from patent licensing. So that's the other extreme, where they get 95% of their billions of dollars in revenues just from patents. So they don't actually make anything. They do a lot of research and development, and they license their intellectual property to others like Apple, Intel, whoever. So everything exists in between. So I don't have a good answer for you. This is an answer that you're going to have to find out yourself.
No, yeah, that makes sense. It kind of just depends based upon your specific design and kind of the criteria that goes behind it.
And I would say to be very robust, you should think about both situations for whatever innovation you're working on. In other words, the situation where patenting is important and the situation patenting is not important. At least hypothetically, it's easy to run thought experiments.
Yeah.
Let's see, maybe I can ask one more person. Let's see, who else? Okay, I'm going to pick randomly. Tara, what did you write?
I was thinking a website and social media advertising and maybe extended direct sales later.
Yeah.
Probably not a store.
Yeah, good, especially with COVID. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Yeah. And remind me again, what was the innovation?
We were thinking about doing a solar panel awning.
Ah, yes. Okay. So in your case, by the way, customer segments are pretty critical because you could be, for example, selling to UTA because they maintain bus stops.
Oh.
And you could have awnings on bus stops, right? That's an obvious thing. So that's a very different customer segment than a building contractor or whatever. So you have to think a little bit deeper as well. And that might also change the way you're thinking about technology. So again, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. So you're saying like, that's right. Sorry. We were just thinking about like kind of smaller group individual customers, but you were saying the more feasible way is actually selling them to bigger companies that.
So you have to answer this question. I'm saying that the purpose of this exercise is for you to explore all this first of all, in a thought experiment. And secondly, by actually talking to potential customers and asking them if your hypothesis is correct. Now, there are pros and cons to both, right? Targeting individual customers might be a little bit easier because there's a lot more of them, right? and then you could potentially do a, I don't know, like a blanket marketing social media campaign or whatever. However, if you're able to get one municipality to adopt it, that might be a very hard to do, because you have to go through the bureaucracy, regulations, whatever. But once you get it, they might be a very long-term customer, and very
and
large customer. Go ahead.
and yeah, and those two groups would actually require different channels. So we kind of need to
Exactly.
yeah.
That's exactly correct. Yeah, exactly. And I can give you a personal experience, actually. So this is a very interesting experience. I interacted once with, I still do, with some companies that make optics for security of passports and driver's licenses and things like this. Right, which you can imagine, if you look at driver's license, there's some security features, and sometimes they have optical features. Now think about the companies that provide these technologies. It's extremely difficult for a company to actually get into this business for many reasons. First of all, it's highly bureaucratic, and especially outside the US, it turns out to be very political. It's very, very, very heavily regulated, and so on and so forth. But once you get into this market, they are your customer for decades, right? You're not talking about 1 or 2 years, you're talking about 50 years, right? So very, very, so the barrier is very high, but once you get it, the rewards are also very high. So it's, again, a very extreme example, but you can think about how that, it's somewhat relevant to some of your project, because a solar panel has to last for 25 years. So maybe that relationship has to be over many decades. So something to keep in mind.
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you.
But again, so that brings me to the next one. But what I want you to keep in mind is really, as a technology, think about these ideas from an engineer's perspective. That's what I want you to do. So don't forget that you're a technologist, because I want the technical innovation to be informed by this exercise. Okay, that's my goal. Okay, let's keep going in the interest of time. We have a lot to cover. So
Customer relationships is kind of the fourth piece. And customer relationships.
Okay. Before I play that, make sure you identify where it is. It's right there. Okay, this is the customer relationship. Again, at the end of this class, I'm going to ask you to present this very briefly, at least. Okay.
Relationships. It's kind of the fourth piece. And customer relationships has a really interesting interaction with these other three pieces. It basically says, how do I get customers? How do I keep them? And how do I grow them? And just like thinking about distribution channels, these are very different for web mobile than they are for physical channels. But visually, they kind of look like this double-sided funnel. So let's just take a look at quickly a web example. In getting customers, you're going to be worrying about, how do I acquire them? That is, how do I get them even to my website? How do I activate them? That is, how do I make them do something? And then later on, we'll see, after I got them, how do I keep them around? That is, how do I not lose them through attrition and churn? And then what can I do once I have customers to make them spend more money or use my product even more? And so one of the things we'll be thinking about is, how do I get, keep, and grow customers? And just like every other step, you might have hypotheses on day one, but you're only going to figure this out when you're out of the building.
Okay, hold on. Let me go back. So let's take a minute, and I'm gonna stop it here.
On day one, but you're only going to figure this.
Okay, I'll stop it here. Let's take a minute, and you guys fill it out. Okay. This is actually quite interesting as well. So we'll talk about it after you have a chance to fill out. So I put this slide up here because this allows you to think about what you're going to fill out, right? So there is, how does the company get, keep, and grow customers? Yeah, and the idea of the funnel, and okay. Okay, my time. I would say I'm going to ask a few of you to tell me what you wrote down, but let me first ask you, how do you think, let's say Netflix, how did they get their customers? Does anyone have a guess? Someone's talking.
I kind of feel like with Netflix, it's more like how they built theirs is that, they started
No.
advertising.
How do they get a new customer?
Oh, word of mouth from your
Yes,
other customers. Mhm.
referrals. Yeah.
Yeah,
And why did someone refer?
because they saw it was a great product, or
Oh, I think they do have film that they can only providing for free versus, let's say, Amazon Prime or like a
Well,
lot of other. So
I,
when you have a star, like a movie you want to see and it's only free on Netflix, I don't know. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And it's like, I don't know.
well,
Right.
so the first point was a referral. Someone referred you to it, but the reason someone referred you to it is because I think you would get a free month of Netflix for referring someone, right? I think it was something like that. I can't remember now, but
I have another plan.
sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I am just thinking about the third world country. So most of them don't have that Netflix or like those kind of access. So I am thinking of that kind of potential customer.
Yes,
So
that's a great point. Yeah, go ahead.
So my point is again some referral or the like to more prominent or the clear view. If
Yes,
a neighbor
yeah.
can, if I refer a neighbor,
trusted referral. That would be a
yes,
trusted referral.
trusted
Yeah.
referral, and if the referral does buy the thing and he could avail a free maintenance service for 1 year, or like this thing, I think this
Yes,
will be more helpful.
that's a really good point. Yeah, I think you went to this point about keep, but let's break this segment into three as in the lecture. There's there's a get. So there's some way you actually acquire the customer. So let's talk about that first. So let me ask. Well, maybe let's ask you, Kata, or maybe Kevin. Why don't you say? How would you get a customer? So what was your think about the three segments here? It's get, keep, and grow. But let's talk about the get.
I have some points.
Well,
And
let me ask Kevin
okay.
first. Kevin, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you guys.
Okay, go ahead. What
Yeah,
is your thought?
I was just kind of thinking about it since kind of thinking about the audience and what type of audience, because more affluent audience with like greater access to the internet can more easily be contacted via referral or something else to kind of promote our product. But maybe people that don't have access to a phone or like with less electricity in more rural areas would be harder to contact directly, and we might need like a third party that can help go over there physically to talk with those kind of communities and kind of recommend our product.
So that's a great point. Now you need to think about who does that today, and can you piggyback on existing networks, right? So the folks who do that are the NGOs, the government organizations. So can you piggyback on those networks that already exist? That would be one way. Doing it yourself is, of course, very expensive because it's hard to get to some of these places, right? Okay, let me ask a different customer segment, outdoor enthusiasts. How would you get them in the developed world, let's say?
Try to maybe build connections with REI.
Yeah, that's an option. But so you advertise through REI, I guess. Okay.
Yeah, and provide maybe coupons and promotions. So like when at the moment it seems cheaper, people started to try it.
Yep.
Get them in
Point.
the door.
And we, of course, have the outdoor recreation conference, or we used to have it. So that would be an obvious place where there are exhibitions, where new products are introduced and so on. And every industry has this, whether you are doing water pasteurization or you're doing solar cooking. So that would be an obvious place to try to get customers. Let's talk briefly about keeping customers. Think again about, why do you keep paying for Amazon every year? I mean, they keep you as a customer if you are, let's assume, or Netflix for that matter. I mean, you pay every month. How do they manage to keep you? Because they delight you with their products, I assume. So any ideas from your project teams?
Like cheap delivery where
No, remember, you've already sold your product. How do you keep them? How do you keep them using it?
like the warranty of the product, how's, after the customer buy it, how you gonna treat them afterwards? If it's broken within, I don't know, some people provide 5 years warranty.
Yeah.
For Amazon, I think it's their return
Yeah.
policy.
Right. This could be part of something called a recurring revenue, which is what Netflix and Amazon does, because you pay every month or every year or something, right? So you could have a situation like that where, for example, let's talk about the desalination. This is a good example. You might have a situation where you can essentially build a desalination system for free and simply have everybody have a subscription model to purchase water. Right? I don't know if it'll work, but you can imagine something like that. Why do how does Tesla keep its customers? They do periodic updates over the air, and people are delighted by the updates, right? They do something more than what they did before they paid for it, before they bought it, at the time that they bought it, I mean. So think creatively, and also think, and it's important to think about it because Tesla is a good example, because Tesla designed their system such that they could do over-the-air updates forever, basically, right? So you may want to think about systems where you can update or do modular upgrades or whatever in a very simple fashion. So your technical innovation needs to accommodate this potential for keeping customers. Again, I'm just giving you ideas. I'm not saying all of these are directly applicable. Before we move on, anyone else? And growing customers, a good example would be referrals. So if one person can refer two people to sign up to Netflix, of course, they grow their customer base. That would be an example. Or promotions, right? Coupons and things like that would be the other way to do referrals. So you have to think specifically about your particular team and what could be possible. And I want you to put that down. Anyone want to add anything? Anything I missed? Anything interesting? Newsletters, email, keep people, Amazon sends me email every week or so saying what's new, right? What's great. That was another example to keep people engaged. Okay, so in the interest of time, we should move on. But you can see how thinking about this can affect your technology. That's really what I want you to get out of it. Because the actual specific thing, you have to spend more time to think about it. Okay, let's move to the next block, which is the revenue. This is probably the most important one because this is what will actually pay the bills, right? So that's the revenue streams. Identify that. Let's watch it.
Thing is revenue streams. How do you actually make money from your product and service being sold to customer segments? Revenue streams basically ask the question, what value is the customer paying for? And it actually has you think about, what's the strategy of how I'm going to capture that value? Is it I'm going to just have a direct sale and it's a transaction based on price? Is it a freemium model where I'm going to give away the product for free and hope that some portion convert later? Is it a license or subscription model? That revenue model is different than the pricing tactics. That is, what is the dollar or pound amount or euro amount that I'm going to be charging? Again, the only way to figure this out is being able to interact with tens or hundreds or thousands of customers till you finally understand what the right revenue stream and revenue model is.
Okay, go ahead and fill this out. This is maybe a little bit easier, but let me leave it at the.
Next piece you want to think about.
Oops. So I'm gonna pause right there. So you can look at the. Whoops. You can look at the different things on the slide, and I want to put timer for a minute. Of course, this is important, obviously. Okay, we have to move a little faster. We have a few more things to cover, so. Okay, let me ask anyone want to share. I'm going to ask for volunteers now. It should be easy, right? How will the company make money?
I can talk about the solar desalination.
Go ahead, yeah.
I had a couple different revenue streams, just like conventional sales, first of all, but also maybe rentals for disaster relief.
Perfect,
and maintenance. Although we want to make our system low maintenance, but there's still some maintenance costs.
Yeah, you can have premium pricing and things like that. Exactly, yeah. Good point. Again, the models, there are not too many options, right? I mean, obviously a direct sale. There's a subscription model like a Netflix, which is very popular nowadays. Then there's the, you can imagine like the Airbnb model, right? Where Airbnb doesn't really own any homes. They just put the homeowner and the home renter, a person who wants to take a vacation together, so they take a cut. And there are many examples of that, obviously. I don't think that applies to many of you, but you can imagine that's another option. You might also consider the disaster relief, like renting option. I think there are several solar companies in the US actually, where you can lease the solar system. So, and in fact, the company might lease your roof, install the solar system, and pay you for the, renting your roof, for example. So many ways to think about this, right? But again, in the interest of time, we should move on. But any questions about it? But I make sure you fill this out. Okay, no questions. So let's jump into the next one, key resources. This is also important. Of course, every block is important. So key resources, we are on the left-hand side here, over here. Okay, I'm gonna move my text. Over here.
Next piece you want to think about is, what are the key resources? What do you need to make the business model work? What assets are important? What's an example of an asset in a key resource? Well, finance. Do you need capital? Do you need a line of credit? Some assets and resources are physical. Do you need physical plant, like a manufacturing line? Do you need specialized machines? Do you need vans and for delivery? Do you need cars? Is there something else you need? Is there intellectual property you need? Is there patents you need to acquire or protect? Do you need to acquire customer lists? Or is it just that you need to get great people, great software programmers in a specific area, or great hardware designers, or great manufacturing people? And then finally, again, the interaction between intellectual and human capital that's another key resource. What specifically do you need to do to keep these people, and who are they?
Okay, so try to fill in what are your key resources? And you can see some examples there. Let's take a minute to do it. I know we're all running very close to the end, so maybe I'll give you 30 seconds. And maybe we won't discuss, but you can imagine the general things are, of course, finance. You need capital to pay people primarily, to buy parts, inventory, all that kind of good stuff. If you need a factory to build something, or do you outsource it? Patents, so we talked about before, and of course, labor. Okay. I think in the interest of time, it's not that it's not important, but I know we have about 5 minutes left, so and I don't want to keep you guys long as I usually do, but let's go to the next box, which is key partners. Okay, it's the left-hand side. Anything to add to that while I move on? Anything very quick?
The next piece
Okay, none. Okay, we'll have a few minutes at the end, so let me play this.
is, who are your key partners and suppliers? And partnerships are kind of interesting, is we need to ask ourselves before what's the deal is what exactly are we acquiring from partners? And also, what activities are they going to perform and when? And this is where startups sometimes make a mistake of thinking, well, large companies do partnerships. I guess I need those too on day one. Turns out the types of partnerships you need in year one are certainly not the ones you're going to need in year 3 or 5 or 10. And the types of partnerships could be strategic alliances, joint ventures, just regular suppliers and buyers. And so you need to be thinking through who they are and actually getting out of the building and testing them.
Okay, so again, take 30 seconds, fill in what you think are the key partners and suppliers. Obviously, examples are, if you are subcontracting manufacturing, the manufacturer would be a key partner. For instance, Apple doesn't make image sensors. They buy them from Sony, but Sony works very closely with Apple to spec out the sensor, so that would be a partner, right? So in your case, you could have a partnership with the NGOs in order to access your customers. And what key activities do they perform? That's the other way to think about this. You could have a partnership with Target because you want Target to put your product in their stores. Yeah, and there are many other options as well, but so just take a cut at it. Okay. Anything to share before I move on? It has to be quick. You're going to share. Okay. Well, feel free to say something, but I'm going to play the next one.
Our key activities.
Activities are in
What's
between.
the most important things you need to do for the business?
So first of all, make sure you recognize where it is so you can fill it in. It's right there. Okay. So.
To make the business model work. Are you in the production business? Are you making something? Or are you in the problem-solving business, like you're doing consulting or engineering? Or are you managing supply chains? What are the key activities you need to become expert at?
Okay. Again, fill that in. I'll give you about 30 seconds. What are the key activities? What do you have to do to be successful? Of course, you have to make something. I don't think any of you are consulting or doing engineering work, but that's also an option. I don't think any of you are, but supply chain management is probably applicable to all of you. How would you get your product to someone? Are you just going to use USPS, FedEx, whatever? You can ship it yourself, assemble it, as Joseph talked about before. Those are key activities. If you're going to install it yourself, are you going to maintain it? Is someone going to pay you to maintain the systems? The awnings with photovoltaics would be a good example for that. You might want to have someone do maintenance to ensure that it's clean and things like that, or you might outsource that. Yeah. And by the way, if you want more ideas, certainly the subsequent lectures in this class gives you many more ideas as well. It goes a bit deeper into each of these aspects. Okay, I'm going to play the last one, which is the cost. Hopefully, and make sure you fill each one out because I'm going to ask you to submit it. So Let's play the last one. Whoops. Why is this not playing? Let me reload it. There we go.
And then finally, all this adds up on the left-hand side over here to costs. What are the costs and expenses to operate the business model? One of the interesting things about cost is it's not just the obvious ones like people or buildings or materials. What you're really going to be asking are what are the entire costs to operate our business model? And so you want to think about what are the most important costs you need to worry about? What are the most expensive resources you're going to need to pay for? And what key activities are the most expensive? And then you want to ask the typical accounting things. What are fixed costs? What are variable costs? Are there economies of scale? And you want to start getting a good handle on what it is that will end up costing you money to run your business.
Okay, so why don't you fill the last one out? Obvious things, fixed costs, variable costs if you have maintenance. Fixed is, what is in the installation. Variable costs could be if you need to change your filter for desalination, or if you are you going to keep selling something for your solar cooker to replace the container or whatever it is. Yeah. Are there economies of scale? Many businesses, of course, will have labor costs will be the largest amount. Sometimes you might have intellectual property costs. So write all that down. And what I'm going to do, since we're almost out of time, I want you to send me your version of Slack the canvas. Take a snapshot of it. Either take a picture if you wrote it down, or on a PDF capture, and send it to me on Slack. It's not mandatory because this is part of assignment 5, but just so I know you all did it. Each team can do it once, so you can get together and send me a version that, let's call it first version. Now, let me go back. Then this is important for your assignment 5, so don't leave quite yet. For assignment 5, what I want you to do, let's take a quick look, is to submit the final business canvas. Now, what does that mean? That means you're going to take the business canvas, then you're going to interview your potential customers and other partners or strategic folks, and then try to come back and try to adjust the business canvas, correct the guesses that were wrong. Okay, so there's an initial version which you did today, and there's a final version which you're going to submit in roughly 3 or 4 weeks. Now, the last thing I want to show, and that means you might actually have to go talk to people, call them up, and of course, this is COVID, you're going to do this by email, Skype, whatever. The last thing I want to show is an example of a business canvas. This is from some time back, but it's a good example of what can be done. Okay, and then if there are questions, I can certainly answer them as well. I know we're out of time, so if you need to leave, it's understandable, but stay for this 5-minute example. So I'm going to just play this.
Will you increase the volume a little bit more?
Let me try it. Oh yeah, I don't know why this went down. So.
A rental service for professional sports jerseys.
Thanks.
And in 5 days, they personally got out of the building and spoke to 169 customers and had 190 people come to their website and actually sold 2 things during the class. Let's take a look at what their business model canvas started with and evolved to. So on day 1, these were their initial hypotheses coming into the class. They thought that their customer segments was going to be sports game attendees who were going to be male, adult, less than $100,000 income, attend 10 games per year. That is, they were beginning with a series of hypotheses about their customer archetype. And they thought their value proposition was going to provide a cheaper way to efficiently license sports jerseys to a game, eliminate the risk of owning a player whose jersey is traded, and to provide alternatives to purchasing counterfeit jerseys. And their sales channel was going to be websites or stadium shops or ticket websites or direct mail. And how they were going to create demand was through search ads, social media, stadium promotions. And their revenue stream was going to be through an annual subscription model. And on the left-hand side, kind of the backstage of the business model canvas, their activities were going to be rental tracking, shipping, dry cleaning, marketing, customer service. And they were going to have as resources inventory of jerseys, warehouses, logistics systems. And their key partners might be the professional sports league and the suppliers and the dry cleaners and the shop vendors and envelope suppliers and UPS and FedEx and the postal service. And their cost structure was going to be for warehousing, shipping, cleaning, logistics, tracking, website development, and maintenance. And this sounds particularly reasonable. You would look at this and go, absolutely, why do I even need to be in this class? But they got out of the building and spoke to 60 people by going to Yankee Stadium.
This is what I meant by you have to do the interviews. So you actually have to talk to people. I mean, not physically, but because of COVID, it can be over email and so on. So let's see what happened here.
And actually meeting a bunch of customers on the first day. And look what happened. They realized that actually women wore sports jerseys as well. And there was no way you could have convinced them of that until they stood in front of the customers at Yankee Stadium and said, hey, it's a 50-50 split. And that it was actually young adults, 18 to 30, and they actually were casual sports fans. And now they started to get a better understanding of what customer relationships were, about getting customers, keeping them, and growing them. And they realized that people would maybe also be interested in a pay-per-rental model as well as an annual subscription. Next, they got out of the building again. And now they started expanding who their customer segment was, and they actually split the segment into two. They realized there were two different archetypes. Sports jersey owners who were male, 13 to 35, but there was also another archetype, which were who attended a single game. And they were male and female, 18 to 30, and they were casual fans. And so now they actually were able to take their revenue stream and match it to their archetype. So for sports jersey owners, an annual subscription made sense. But for single game attendees, a parental made sense. And their value prop differed for, again, those two different archetypes. As you'll see later, what we need is every time we have a unique archetype, we need at minimum a matching value proposition and a matching revenue model for each archetype. The fourth day, they learned some more things. Most importantly, they learned how much would some of those sports jersey owners actually pay in an annual subscription. They actually started asking some serious solid numbers, and the answer they got back was $200. And they also understood that social media would be a big component in customer acquisition. The next day, they learned some more. They actually learned that another alternative for sports jersey owners would be a monthly subscription and also a one-time rental. And they started thinking about how would you keep those customers? That is, how would you eliminate churn and increase loyalty? And they started to think about seniority loyalty programs and how they would grow those customers by cross-selling and upselling them with premium subscriptions and family plans. So you could see after 5 days, just 5 days, after talking to 160 customers, you could see how the business model evolved dramatically from something that looked like this on day one to something that looked like this on day 5. Day 1, a series of untested hypotheses, a faith-based enterprise. On day 5, the faith has turned into facts. And this startup is on the road to actually building something that customers might want. So in the rest of these lectures, we're going to take you through each one of the business model components and hoping you'll get out of the building, just like this team, to test each one of your hypotheses.
Okay, well, we'll stop here since we're way out of time, but it gives you an idea of what happens when you actually test your hypothesis with potential customers, partners, and other key folks who would be important if you actually took this to a real startup. Okay, so I see some of you have already submitted your initial canvas. If you, I mean, it's not mandatory, but I would say for assignment 5, I need you to submit the initial canvas and the final canvas together. But if you want, you can submit the initial canvas today so you don't forget and it's fresh in your minds. But it's important that you think about doing the final version of this and doing the interviews to get the final version of it before assignment 5 is due. So just make sure you plan for that. And of course, assignment 4 is due before that. So, okay, I'm happy to stick around. I know we're past time, so if you have any questions, I can answer them, but feel free to leave. Are there any questions? I know this is very different than what you might be used to in a typical engineering class, but it's very important that you think this way. That's the purpose of this exercise.
Quick question. Are we uploading that business model to Canvas, or can we just send it to you on Slack?
Yeah, you just send it to me on Slack.
Okay, okay, cool.
Canvas is also fine. Anything is fine. I know there's a confusion between business Canvas and the school Canvas, so, but anything is fine.
Okay, okay, I'll message you on Slack.
Do we just submit one initial one as a group, or?
Yeah, one as a group is perfect.
Okay, sweet.
Again, it's not mandatory. I would just encourage you, so that way I know that you did it. And it's if you can't do it today, it's fine, you know. But just make sure you do it in the next day or two, so you don't wait and procrastinate, because you need to see the change from the initial guess to the final guess when you have actually done the interviews and talked to folks. So again, and I will remind you, but make sure you also think about folks you can talk to. For example, if your product is to sell to homeowners, you can talk to your parents, who are probably most likely to be homeowners, right? So that would be a very simple example. And hopefully you're all seeing them. Well, the assignment is due before Thanksgiving. Usually we do this around Thanksgiving, because then this is a good conversation to have during Thanksgiving dinner. But again, because of COVID, everything is different. So this year is a little different, nevertheless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. And see you next week.